Archaeologists have discovered a new conehead skeleton in Russia, near the border of Kazakhstan. Welcome to Skywatch TV. I'm Derek Gilbert. This is just the latest in a number of discoveries. They've been found on just about every continent. And with us today is the director and host of a forthcoming series of documentaries called True Legends, Timothy Alberino. Timothy, again, this most recent discovery, which just made the news this past week in Russia, tentatively identified as a member of the Sarmatian peoples that we know from about the time of Christ, about 2,000 years ago. Your work focused in South America, Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, a little bit down there, and that area is very well known for a number of these skeletons with cranial deformation. Now, I thought the Paracas skulls, I was not aware that those skulls were found without any scale of size because they weren't connected to the skeletons. But you're telling me off camera here that there are some where we do have some information as to, because they were connected to the skeletons, the size. Yeah. Well, what did you find, and how does this relate to the so-called ancient astronaut, ancient alien theory?
A lot of people think that the elongated skulls are exclusive to Paracas. Yeah. That's where some of the biggest ones have come, but actually the biggest one I've ever seen comes out of the Atacama Desert, which is, the second biggest desert in the world, which it's in Peru partly, most of it's in Chile. And there's some massive elongated skulls that have come out of that region. Very, very pronounced conehead skulls that a lot of people haven't really taken notice of, and those have been unearthed recently. But they're also found everywhere, all over the world. And
right.
The ones that were found in Mexico don't even look human. They look They look like they came out of the Alien movies.
Right. I mean, Aboriginal Australians.
Absolutely.
Russia.
Yep, you just mentioned Russia.
Europe. So yeah, they're all over. Every continent is. Yeah. Even here in the United States, the early European settlers found the Choctaw and the Chinook Indians. Binding the heads of their children.
Yep. And the binding, and of course everybody just, a lot of the historical community believes that, well, that's just head binding, that's just, what do you call it, the boarding, where they put the boards on the head and then they bind it so that they would get that cone shape. But what people have to realize is that was done in emulation of this race of entities that were probably very much smarter than Homo sapiens. Some people call them Homo capensis. Kieran Hudes recently came out and said that they're actually, the Vatican is hiding them. There's this race called Homo capensis. That's a whole other deal. but basically, when you bind a skull, and that's real, I mean, the people do that all over the world, but when you bind a skull, cradle boarding is what it's called. You don't get more volume. You don't get more cranial mass or volume.
You just rearrange the shape of the skull as it develops.
But we're dealing with entities that had, 2/3 larger heads than we have, and
more space in here for brain.
More probably, yeah. Their cerebral cortex was probably larger than ours, and they were probably, according to Kieran Hudes, Homo capensis has a capacity for mathematics that we could only dream of. So whether that's true or not, I don't know. But what is true is that these entities were very different than us because they're not only the shape of their skulls, but the configuration of their skulls is completely different than Homo sapiens, which means there's something genetic going on. The phenotype is expressing something different than what we have. In other words, the genotype is different. So, yeah, and what we found in relationship, we didn't go to Peru to do elongated skulls. That's been covered. We went down there to look. Obviously, we're always looking for evidence of giants, always looking for evidence of the pre-flood world, always looking for stuff leading to fallen angels, stargates, ancient technology, all of that, everywhere we go. And something that we found was looking in the records of the chroniclers of Peru during and after the conquest of the Inca Empire, which happened in the mid-16th century. We found evidence from these chroniclers of giants with elongated skulls. And they're referred to as giants with deformed heads. And this comes up over and over and over. Giants with specifically deformed heads, which we imagine they're referencing elongated skulls, because the rest of the giants were very human-looking, but their heads were deformed. So basically, the elongated skull situation doesn't just apply to regular-sized entities. We're talking about giant. When I say giants, 15 feet to 30 feet.
And this is reported by the chroniclers,
Yes.
the Spanish chroniclers who accompanied the conquistadors.
Yes, there's a specific Jesuit priest who wrote the extirpation of idolatry in Peru, and he was commissioned by I believe by Rome, by the Catholic Church, to extirpate idolatry in Peru after the conquest of the Inca. In other words, to exterminate idolatry in Peru, and working also with the Holy Inquisition that was established in Lima, Peru, the capital of Peru, immediately after the conquest. In fact, during the conquest, they got and that was the Spanish version of the Inquisition,
Yes.
the worst,
Yeah.
the part of the Inquisition, the
one
worst
that
branch.
nobody expects. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the Inquisition and the Jesuits and also the official inspectors the royal inspectors from Spain were also sent. And their job was to, again, extirpate or exterminate idolatry in Peru. And what does this have to do with giants? Well, Pablo Jose Arriaga, this Jesuit priest who was commissioned to do this, records, along with the official inspectors, they made official records, that they went into a cave. The natives led them to a cave as they're going and getting rid of the idols and everything that the Indians worshipped was burned, including people, was burned and destroyed, extirpated. And they went into a cave. And they found in the cave, and this is what they say, and we got it in our documentary, that there is a bunch of, they call them dead Gentiles, just a bunch of dead natives, and 3 bodies of giants. And in another document, those giants are said to be 30 feet tall.
30 feet.
3 bodies of giants with elongated skulls, with deformed heads, elongated heads, and those giants were burned. They burned their bodies. Why? Because the people were worshiping them, and they were dead. They were probably mummified or something. Maybe even they were in shrines, so maybe they were sitting on thrones. And the dead Gentiles were probably, I think we can speculate that those were human sacrifices to these dead giants whom the people worshiped. That's why they were burned. That's why the bones were incinerated by the Catholic Church, and many of them ended up in Lima, in the office of the Secretary of the Inquisition, no less.
What kind of influence or control does the Vatican have over access to those artifacts today?
Wow. Well, let's just say this. I went to Cusco, and I lived in Peru for a long time, and I never went to Cusco, and people are always surprised by that because everybody goes to Cusco, Machu Picchu. I just never cared to go there because there's so many tourists. But we ended up going there, and this is the Cusco stuff is in episode 2. Episode 1 of our documentary deals with the Altiplano. And the Altiplano is what it deals with. But when I went to Cusco, I was absolutely amazed to discover the level of control that the Vatican executes over that area, the level of control that they have over the megalithic sites, over the city of Cusco itself. I mean, there's I forget how many cathedrals there are in Cusco. There's dozens of cathedrals, and there's 3 evangelical churches. I mean, and they oppress the evangelicals in Cusco. A lot of people don't know that, but there's hardly any evangelicals in Cusco because they are oppressed by the Catholic Church. But the Catholic churches, and this is a historical record, by the way. We're going to have this in episode 2. One of the historians writes that underneath Cusco, going from Cusco all the way to Tiahuanaco, there's a vast underground network, underground tunnels that were built. And this is stated as fact, that there is a vast network of underground tunnels that seems to imply that they were built, that they were made, constructed, and we believe by giants, by the way. But
now, when were those tunnels discovered? Were they discovered during the time?
I don't know, but these are the historian that I'm talking about is a chronicler. So we're talking they knew about them during the conquest and after the conquest.
That was
Peru.
my point. Yeah,
and a lot of people believe that the Inca hid a lot of their gold down there, so that the conquistadors couldn't find it. And the conquistadors would go into these tunnels, and we were told by the guides, the official guides who took us through some of those Catholic churches, some of those cathedrals, that many conquistadors looking for gold got lost in the tunnels and were never heard from again because they're so vast, and you had to know how to navigate them. But what I'm saying is the Catholic Church is literally sitting on top. The Dominican order has been excavating and doing all kinds of stuff under Cusco for many years, specifically the Dominican order. Very interesting stuff.
That is, and it raises the same question I have about the Vatican's research, the Vatican Observatory down on Mount Graham. I mean, what does this have to do with preaching the gospel to the ends of the earth and making disciples of all nations?
You know, everywhere we go, Derek, everywhere we go, whether it's Sardinia, whether it's Bolivia, Peru, we find this connection to the Vatican. We're not looking for it. We're not trying to find it. It's there. And it's, for some reason, the Vatican is all over this stuff. When you talk about giants, anything that has to do with the pre-flood world, anything that has to do with the world before the flood of Noah, the Vatican is intensely interested in it. And I can only imagine what some of those secret underground facilities under the Vatican have in storage. Probably giant bodies of... Listen, we know for sure, because of these documents, that in Lima, they had full skeletons of giants in Lima that were in the office of the Secretary of the Inquisition. So where did they go? Where did those bones go? Well, we can only assume that either they were destroyed or they went, to Rome.
Where do people find out more about the documentary film series True Legends?
They can go to our website, truelegendstheseries.com.
And the first episode, Technology of the Fallen, will be out soon. Keep watch for it in the SkyWatch TV store. We'll also be making that available as part of a special package with the David Flynn collection. And just very briefly, Timothy, what influence did David Flynn have on your research?
A lot. David Flynn discovered a vast network of geoglyphs. And to my knowledge, he was the first one who wrote about it. That was just when Google Earth and that was coming online. Right. Either it was right before or right after, but there were some other tools back then that you could use to see the satellite images. But it definitely was just because David says himself that it was right at the time when the high resolution stuff was coming online. So right when the high resolution satellite images were available, David Flynn took a look at the Lake Titicaca area in the Altiplano, and he discovered a vast network of what he calls geoglyphs. And these geoglyphs are intersecting shapes, circles, squares, straight lines that run for miles, obviously intelligently designed, configurations. And David Flynn wonders if they had to do with giants, and he speculates a lot of stuff about them, and I think he was right. And people can get the book and read what David Flynn wrote about the geoglyphs of Tiwanaku. We wanted to go follow up, take a look at that ourselves. And so that's part of our documentary.
Fascinating stuff. Timothy Alberino is the host and director of the True Legends documentary film series. We thank you for watching. I'm Derek Gilbert, and this is SkyWatch TV.